The sledgehammer struck concrete one final time as Marcus wiped sweat from his brow, staring at the remnants of what had been his family's beloved above-ground pool. 3 years of memories reduced to twisted metal and shattered dreams. But as he turned toward the house, a flash of neon pink caught his Icarin from next door. Marching across his lawn with an armload of pool floats, her phone pressed to her ear. "Yes, officer, he's destroyed community property, and I have witnesses." Marcus felt his blood run cold. Community property, his own pool, the sound of approaching sirens mixed with Karen's triumphant smile as she dropped a unicorn float onto his freshly demolished pool deck. What had started as a simple home renovation was about to become a nightmare that would expose secrets, shatter friendships, and reveal just how far one neighbor would go thus. Sledgehammer felt heavier with each swing, but Marcus Whitfield pushed through the exhaustion. 3 hours of demolition had reduced his family's cherished above-ground pool to a skeleton of twisted metal and concrete chunks. Sweat dripped from his brow onto the deck planks as he surveyed the destruction, feeling equal parts relief and melancholy. "Dad, you sure about this?" His 17-year-old son Jake emerged from the house, holding 2 bottles of water. The teenager's voice carried the weight of someone. Watching childhood memories being systematically erased, Marcus accepted the water gratefully, downing half the bottle before responding. "The maintenance costs are killing us, son. Plus, your mom's been wanting that garden space for years." He gestured toward the far corner of the yard where Sarah had already begun marking out plots with spray paint. "Besides, you'll be off to college next year. When's the last time you actually used it?" Jake kicked at a piece of metal decking. "Last summer, I guess, but still." "Change is hard," Marcus said, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "But sometimes it's necessary." The sound of a door slamming made both men turn toward the house next door. Karen Hutchinson stood on her back porch, arms crossed, her usual disapproving expression magnified by the afternoon sun reflecting off her oversized sunglasses. "Great," Jake muttered under his breath. "Here comes the fun police." Karen had been their neighbor for 8 years, ever since she'd moved in following her messy divorce. What had started as cordial neighborly relations had gradually deteriorated into a series of complaints, property line disputes, and passive-aggressive encounters over everything from lawn care to garbage can placement. Marcus, Karen's voice, carried across the chain-link fence that separated their properties. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" Marcus forced a smile and walked closer to the fence. "Afternoon, Karen. Just taking down the old pool. Sarah's been wanting to put in a vegetable garden." "You can't just destroy that pool," Karen said, her voice rising with each word. "My property value depends on the amenities in this neighborhood." "It's my pool, Karen. On my property." Marcus kept his tone level, though he felt his patience already wearing thin. "That pool has been a selling point for this entire block," Karen continued, now walking along the fence line. "I've told potential buyers about the community pool access. You're damaging everyone's investment." Jake snorted. "Community pool." "Mom, did you hear that?" Sarah Whitfield emerged from the house, wiping her hands on a dish towel. At 42, she maintained the same graceful composure that had first attracted Marcus 20 years ago, but her expression hardened when she saw Karen. "Community pool," Sarah repeated, her voice carrying a dangerous edge. "Karen, that's our pool. We bought it. We maintain it. We pay for the chemicals and the electricity." "But you've always let the neighborhood kids use it," Karen protested, "including my Jennifer." "That establishes precedent." Marcus felt his jaw clench. "We've been neighborly, Karen. There's a difference between being kind and establishing legal precedent. We'll see about that." Karen pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. "I'm calling the Homeowners Association. This kind of unilateral decision affects everyone. The HOA doesn't have authority over individual property improvements," Sarah said, stepping closer to the fence. "We checked before we started." "You checked wrong," Karen snapped. "And I'm also calling the city. I bet you don't have permits for this destruction." Marcus set down his sledgehammer and walked to the fence. "Karen, I understand you're disappointed, but this is our decision to make. We've been more than generous sharing our pool over the years, but we never promised it would be permanent." "Generous?" Karen's voice reached a new octave. You mean you've been building community goodwill that you're now destroying? Do you know how many neighborhood barbecues have centered around that pool? How many friendships were formed? All of which can continue in other ways, Sarah interjected. Maybe in your pool, if you decide to install one. Karen's face flushed. Red, I can't afford a pool. You know that. That's not our responsibility, Marcus said, immediately regretting the harshness in his tone. An uncomfortable silence settled over the three adults. Jake had retreated to the house, clearly wanting no part of the escalating confrontation. In the distance, a lawnmower hummed, and children's laughter echoed from somewhere down the street. You know what? Karen said finally, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. I've been a good neighbor to you people for 8 years. I've watched your house when you went on vacation. I've signed for your packages. I've tolerated your son's loud music and your dog's barking. And we've appreciated all of that, Sarah said carefully. But this, Karen gestured toward the demolished pool, this is selfish. This is you destroying something that belongs to all of us. It belongs to us, Marcus said firmly. We have the receipts, the installation records, the maintenance logs. It's our pool. Karen was your pool, Karen corrected. Now it's just a waste of space and broken dreams. She turned and stormed back toward her house, phone still in hand. Marcus watched her go, feeling a mixture of frustration and foreboding. She's going to be a problem, Sarah said quietly. She's always been a problem, Marcus replied. But what can she actually do? It's our property. The next morning, Marcus woke to the sound of voices in his backyard. He glanced at the clock, 7:30 a.m. on a Saturday. Through the bedroom window, he could see Karen standing in his yard, not near the fence, but actually on his property, talking to a man in a city uniform. Sarah, he said, shaking his wife awake. Karen's in our backyard with someone from the city. Sarah bolted upright, instantly alert. What? They dressed quickly and headed outside, where they found Karen standing next to the demolished pool with a city inspector who was taking notes on a clipboard. Excuse me, Marcus said, approaching the pair. Can I help you? The inspector, a thin man in his 50s with a permanent squint, looked up from his clipboard. Mr. Whitfield, I'm Inspector Rodriguez from the City Planning Department. We received a complaint about unpermitted demolition. Marcus felt his stomach drop. What kind of permit would I need to take down a pool on my own property? Depends on the type of pool, sir. If it's considered a permanent structure, you'd need a demolition permit. Also, there are regulations about disposal of construction materials. Karen stepped forward, her smile barely concealing her satisfaction. I told you there were rules. Ma'am, Inspector Rodriguez said to Karen, I'll need to speak with the property owner privately. Of course, Karen said, but she made no move. To leave, Karen? Sarah said pointedly. He means you need to leave our property. I have every right to be here, Karen replied, as a concerned neighbor and taxpayer. Actually, ma'am, you don't, the inspector said. Unless you're invited by the property owner, you're trespassing. Karen's face reddened, but she retreated. To the fence line. I'll be watching from my own property then. Inspector Rodriguez spent 30 minutes examining the demolished pool, taking measurements and asking questions about the original installation. Marcus answered as best he could. But his anxiety grew with each notation the inspector made. Mr. Whitfield Rodriguez said finally, I'm going to need to see your original permits for the pool installation, any electrical permits for the wiring, and documentation of proper disposal for the materials you're removing. The pool was installed 8 years ago, Marcus said. I'd have to dig through old files. You have 7 days to provide the documentation. If you can't prove the pool was properly permitted initially, or if you don't have proper disposal permits for the demolition, you'll face fines and potentially be required to restore the area to its original state. Marcus felt the ground shift beneath his feet. Restore it. You mean rebuild the pool? If that's what it takes to bring your property back into compliance? Yes, sir. After the inspector left, Karen approached the fence again, her expression triumphant. I tried to warn you, she said. You can't just destroy community assets without consequences. It's not a community asset, Sarah said through gritted teeth. Tell that to the city, Karen replied. Oh, and Marcus, you might want to check your homeowner's insurance. I called them too. Apparently, deliberate destruction of property. Void your coverage. Marcus stared at her in disbelief. You called our insurance company. I called everyone I could think of. The city, the county, the HOA, your insurance company, and the EPA. That pool water has to go somewhere. Marcus barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Karen's triumphant smile and the stack of cash she'd collected from their neighbors. By 5 a.m., he gave up trying and made coffee, standing at the kitchen window, watching the sunrise over the demolished pool. "You're up early," Sarah said, appearing in the doorway in her robe. "Couldn't sleep. Keep thinking about what Harold said, about getting a lawyer." Sarah poured herself coffee and joined him at the window. "Do you think we really need one?" "I don't know, but Karen's clearly not done with us." As if summoned by his words, Karen's back door opened, and she emerged carrying a large plastic storage bin. Even from their window, Marcus could see it was filled with the pool toys from the night before, the same toys she'd bought with money collected from neighbors who thought they were funding a legal battle. "What is she doing?" Sarah asked. They watched as Karen carried the bin to the fence. Lionel began pulling items out: inflatable unicorns, beach balls, water guns. Foam noodles. She arranged them along the fence like a bizarre memorial display. "She's staging something," Marcus said, a cold dread settling in his stomach. Karen pulled out her phone and began taking pictures of the toys, positioned so that the demolished pool was visible in the background. She moved around the fence, shooting from different angles, her movements deliberate and calculated. "She's building a case," Sarah said quietly. "Whatever she's planning, she's documenting it." Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Karen. "Check your email. Time to discuss terms." He opened his email to find a message with the subject line, "Neighborhood. Pool restoration demands." The body of the email was lengthy, written in pseudo-legal language that made Marcus's head spin. "Listen to this," he said, reading aloud. "The undersigned neighborhood representatives demand immediate restoration of the community pool facility, reimbursement for collected usage fees, and establishment of a neighborhood pool management committee with shared decision-making authority." Shared decision-making authority. Sarah's voice rose. "For our pool, on our property." Marcus continued reading. "Failure to comply within 30 days will result in legal action, city code enforcement complaints, and possible criminal charges for theft of services and environmental violations." Criminal charges. Sarah sat down heavily. "Marcus, she's actually threatening to have us arrested." "It gets worse," Marcus said, scrolling down. "A community meeting will be held tonight at 7 p.m. to discuss implementation of these demands. The Whitfields are required to attend." Required. Sarah's voice was dangerously quiet. "She's requiring us to attend a meeting about our own property." Before Marcus could respond, his phone rang. The caller ID showed Johnson, Mike, their neighbor, from across the street. "Mike," Marcus answered, hoping for a friendly voice. "Marcus, listen." Mike's voice was strained. "I need to talk to you about this pool situation. Mike, you have to know we never charged anyone for pool access." "That's what I thought. But Karen showed me bank records. She's got documentation going back 3 years. Marcus felt his frustration boiling over. "Mike, you know me, you know Sarah. Do you honestly think we'd secretly charge neighbors for pool access?" A long pause. "I don't know what to think anymore, Marcus, but I've got to ask, do you remember when Tommy Martinez had his birthday party at your pool last summer? Of course, great party. Karen says you charged the Martinez family $200 for the party rental." Marcus almost dropped the phone. "That's insane, Mike. They brought food for everyone, including us. It wasn't a rental, it was a neighborhood party. But you did accept money from them that day." Marcus searched his memory. "Alina gave me $40 to cover the cost of the pizza we ordered because they forgot to bring enough food. It had nothing to do with pool rental." "That's not how Karen's presenting it." "Then Karen's lying." Another pause. "Look, Marcus, I've known you for 8 years. I want to believe you. But Karen's got a paper trail, and she's got people scared about their property values. So what are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe you should consider her demands. Rebuild the pool, set up some kind of community management system. It might be easier than fighting this." Marcus stared at the phone in disbelief. "You're suggesting I rebuild my own pool and then give the neighborhood control over it?" "I'm suggesting you find a way to make this go away before it gets worse." The line went dead. Marcus looked at Sarah, who had been listening to the conversation. They're all going to side with her, Sarah said, even the people who know better. We need to get ahead of this, Marcus said. Before tonight's meeting, they spent the morning making phone calls, trying to reach neighbors individually to explain their side of the story. The responses were uniformly discouraging. Some neighbors were polite but distant. Others were openly hostile. The Hendersons weren't answering their phone. The Martinez family hung up when Sarah identified herself. By noon, Marcus felt like he was drowning. That's when he noticed the white van parked across the street. "Sarah," he called, "come look." At this, she joined him at the front window. The van had Channel 7 News emblazoned on its side, and a reporter was setting up a camera on the sidewalk. "She called the news," Sarah said flatly. "Of course she did." They watched as the reporter, a young woman with perfectly styled hair and a serious expression, began conducting interviews with neighbors. Karen appeared almost immediately, playing the role of concerned community advocate with practiced ease. Marcus's phone rang. Unknown number, Mr. Whitfield. "This is Jessica Chen from Channel 7 News. We're doing a story about the pool controversy in your neighborhood. Would you like to comment? What exactly are you reporting?" "We've received information about a neighborhood dispute over a community pool that was allegedly destroyed to avoid paying back fees to residents. We'd like to get your side of the story." Marcus felt his world tilting again. It wasn't a community pool. It was our pool on our property. "I understand there's some dispute about that. Would you be willing to do an on-camera interview?" "I need to think about it. We're planning to air the story on tonight's news, with or without your comment." Marcus hung up and looked at Sarah. "Channel 7 is running a story tonight about the community pool controversy. This is a nightmare," Sarah said. "She's actually going to ruin our lives over a pool." That afternoon, Marcus watched from his window as more news vans arrived. Channel 4, Channel 12, even a newspaper. Reporter. Karen held court in her front yard, surrounded by cameras and microphones, playing the role of grassroots activists fighting for neighborhood rights. "Look at her," Sarah said, joining him at the window. "She's loving every minute of this." Karen was indeed in her element, gesturing dramatically toward the demolished pool site. Holding up papers she claimed were evidence of the Whitfields' deception. Several neighbors had gathered to support her, including some Marcus had considered friends. "We should go out there," Sarah said, "tell our side and say that we're not guilty of charges that don't make sense in the first place." Better than letting her control the narrative. But before they could decide, Marcus's phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed Rodriguez, city inspector. "Mr. Whitfield, I need to inform you that we've received multiple complaints about your property. I'll be returning tomorrow with a full inspection team." "What kind of complaints?" "Environmental violations, unpermitted business operations, and possible health code violations related to the pool demolition." Marcus felt his head spinning. "Inspector Rodriguez, I provided you with all the documentation you requested. The documentation you provided was insufficient. We need complete records of all financial transactions related to the pool, environmental impact assessments, and proof of proper waste disposal." Financial transactions. It was a family pool. "Sir, we've received evidence that the pool was operated as a commercial facility that changes the demolition requirements significantly." After the inspector hung up, Marcus slumped into his chair. "They're treating this like we were running a business. Because Karen convinced them we were, but that's impossible. You can't just declare someone's pool a business and make it true." Sarah's laugh was bitter. "You can if you have enough people backing you up and a compliant media ready to run with the story." As evening approached, Marcus could see neighbors gathering in Karen's backyard again. The crowd was larger than the night before, and this time there were news cameras present. "They're setting up for a circus," Sarah said, "with us as the main attraction." Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Karen. "Media is here. Last chance to attend and apologize before this gets worse." "Apologize," Sarah read over his shoulder. "For what?" "For not playing along with her delusion." They watched as Karen addressed the crowd, her voice carrying across the yard. She was holding up enlarged photos, the ones she'd taken that morning, of the pool toys arranged by the fence. "Look at that," Sarah said. "She's using those staged photos as evidence." Marcus squinted at the images. Even from a distance, He could see they were designed to make it look like the pool toys belonged to neighborhood children who had been using the pool regularly. "Ladies and gentlemen," Karen's voice carried clearly in the evening air, "these are the belongings of children who were using the community P." Marcus woke to the sound of voices and car doors slamming. Through his bedroom window, he could see 3 city vehicles parked in front of his house: Inspector Rodriguez's sedan, a white environmental services truck, and what appeared to be a code enforcement van. "Sarah," he whispered, shaking his wife awake. "They're here." By the time Marcus and Sarah dressed and made their way outside, a small crowd of neighbors had gathered on the sidewalk. Karen stood at the center, playing hostess to the growing spectacle, directing the officials toward different areas of the Whitfield property. "Mr. Whitfield," Inspector Rodriguez approached with a clipboard and a grim expression. "We need to conduct a comprehensive inspection of your property. This is Environmental Inspector Lisa Chen and Code Enforcement Officer David Park." "Comprehensive? Inspection for what?" Marcus asked. "Multiple violations have been reported," Officer Park said, consulting his own clipboard. "Unpermitted business operations, environmental contamination, and improper disposal of hazardous materials." Inspector Chen stepped forward, wearing latex gloves and carrying what looked like a soil testing kit. "Sir, we need to test the ground where your pool was located for chemical contamination." "Chemical contamination?" Sarah's voice cracked. "From pool chemicals, improper disposal of chlorinated water can create environmental hazards," Chen explained, "especially if it's been happening regularly over an extended period." Marcus watched in disbelief as the inspector began taking soil samples from the demolished pool site. "We drained the pool through the proper channels. Into the storm drain system, like everyone does. That depends on the volume and frequency," Chen said. "Commercial pool operations have different disposal requirements than residential pools." "It wasn't a commercial operation," Marcus protested. Officer Park looked up from his clipboard. "Sir, we have reports of regular commercial activity at this location. Pool parties, swimming lessons, equipment rentals. That constitutes a business operation, regardless of how you characterized it personally." Marcus felt the familiar sensation of the ground shifting beneath his feet. Those weren't commercial activities. Those were neighborhood gatherings. Gatherings where money changed. Hands Inspector Rodriguez added. "We have photographic evidence of financial transactions related to pool access." From across the yard, Karen's voice carried clearly. "Officers, you should also check the septic system. I have concerns about the volume of wastewater this operation," who was generating. Marcus spun around to stare at her. "Septic system? Karen, you know we're on city water and sewer, are you?" Karen approached the group, her expression concerned and helpful. "Because I've noticed some unusual drainage patterns in my yard. Flooding that corresponds with heavy pool usage at your property." "That's impossible," Sarah said. "Our pool drainage doesn't connect to anything on your property." "I have photographs," Karen said, producing her ever-present phone. "Standing water in my yard after pool parties here. Water damage to my fence. My insurance company is very interested in the source of that water." Inspector Chen looked up from her soil samples. "Ma'am, do you have documentation of property damage?" "Extensive documentation," Karen confirmed. "Photos, insurance claims, water damage assessments. My property has been significantly impacted by the commercial pool operation next door." Marcus felt his temper rising. There was no commercial pool operation. "Sir," Officer Park said sharply, "please lower your voice. We're conducting an official investigation." "Investigation of what?" "I took down my own pool on my own property." "You took down what appears to have been an unlicensed commercial facility," Park corrected, "without proper permits, environmental clearance, or notification to affected neighbors." "Affected neighbors?" Marcus gestured toward Karen. "The only affected neighbor is standing right there, and she's the one making false reports." "False reports?" Karen's voice carried a note of wounded innocence. "Officer Park, I think you should see what I've set up in my backyard to address the community need that was created when the Whitfields destroyed our pool." The officials followed Karen toward her backyard, with Marcus and Sarah trailing behind. What Marcus saw there made his stomach drop. Karen's temporary kiddie pool had been transformed overnight into an elaborate setup. She'd added a deck platform, a small filtration system, and professional-looking pool equipment. The area was surrounded. by the toys she'd been using as props, but now they were arranged as if they belonged to children who used the facility regularly. As you can see, Karen explained to the officials, "I've had to create a temporary community pool to serve the neighborhood children, who were left without access when the Whitfields shut down their operation." "This is your pool, Inspector?" Rodriguez asked. "This is our community's emergency response," Karen corrected. "Funded by neighborhood donations and operated as a true community facility." Unlike the Whitfields' secretive commercial operation, Officer Park walked around the setup, taking notes. "How long has this been operational?" "Just since the crisis began," Karen said. "But I've already had over 30 children from the neighborhood use the facility. Their parents are desperate for safe pool access." Marcus stared at the scene. Recognizing the masterstroke, Karen had created physical evidence of community need, while positioning herself as the selfless neighbor, stepping up to fill the void left by the Whitfields' greed. "Ma'am," Inspector Chen said, "what permits do you have for this pool operation?" Karen's smile faltered for just a moment. "Well, this is just a temporary emergency measure, I assumed, ... "You assumed incorrectly," Chen said, making notes. "Any pool operation serving the public requires proper permits, regardless of the circumstances." "But this is different," Karen protested. "This is a community service, not a business." "Are you collecting fees?" Officer Park asked. "Just donations to cover costs." "That's a business operation," Park said flatly. "You're in violation of the same codes you're accusing the Whitfields of violating." Marcus felt a surge of hope, but it was short-lived. "However," Park continued, "the Whitfields' operation was clearly larger in scale and duration. We'll need to investigate both situations." As the officials continued their inspection, Marcus noticed more neighbors gathering, but this time something was different. Harold Henderson stood at the edge of the crowd, his expression troubled. The Martinez family was whispering among themselves, casting worried glances at Karen's setup. Marcus Harold approached quietly. "Can I have a word?" They walked away from the crowd, toward the front of Marcus's house. Son Harold said, his voice low, "I think we've all made a mistake here." "What do you mean?" "Last night, after the news story aired, my grandson Tommy came to me. He was crying, saying he'd gotten you in trouble." Marcus felt his heart clench. "Harold, Tommy didn't do anything wrong. That's what he told me. He said you hired him to clean the pool, paid him fair wages for fair work. He said he never paid you anything for pool access, and he was confused about why people were saying that. That's exactly what happened." Harold nodded slowly. "And then my wife started asking questions about the money I've given you over the years. The fence repair, the fertilizer, helping with my roof. She realized that woman over there was twisting every neighborly transaction into evidence of some grand conspiracy. Karen's been building a false narrative from day one. That's what I'm starting to think, and I'm not the only one." Harold gestured toward the other neighbors. "Elena Martinez is upset because she realized Karen's been using her family's story about Tommy's birthday party without permission, making it sound like you charged them for a pool rental when you know damn well that party was Elena's idea to thank you and Sarah for watching their kids all summer." Marcus felt a glimmer of hope. Are people starting to see through Karen's lies? Some are. But here's the problem. Son Corinne's created such a mess with the city that even if every neighbor recants their story, you're still facing official investigations. As if summoned by their conversation, Inspector Rodriguez approached them. "Mr. Whitfield, we need to discuss our findings." They walked back toward the demolished pool site, where Inspector Chen was packing up her testing equipment. "Sir," Rodriguez said, "we found several issues that need to be addressed." Marcus braced himself. "First, your original pool installation was properly permitted. We found the records in our archives." Marcus felt a surge of relief. "However," Rodriguez continued, "the demolition should have been permitted due to the pool's electrical components and the volume of water disposal involved." "What does that mean?" "It means you'll face a fine for unpermitted demolition. But it's a relatively minor violation. $500 plus the cost of a retroactive permit. That's it for the demolition." "Yes, however, we still need to investigate the reported business operation." Officer Park joined the conversation. "Mr. Whitfield, we've reviewed the evidence provided by Ms. Hutchinson. While some financial transactions clearly occurred at this property, the pattern doesn't support the claim of an ongoing commercial operation. so we're cleared. Not exactly, Park said. We found irregularities in Ms. Hutchinson's own operation that require immediate attention. Marcus looked across the yard at Karen, who was still explaining her community pool setup to Inspector Che. Marcus woke to the sound of his doorbell ringing at 6:47 a.m. Through the peephole, he saw a man in an expensive suit holding a briefcase and clipboard, definitely not a neighbor or city official. Mr. Whitfield, I'm attorney David Brennan. I represent Ms. Karen Hutchinson in her civil action against you. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Civil action? May I come in? We have quite a bit to discuss. 20 minutes later, Marcus and Sarah sat at their kitchen table across from a lawyer who looked like he specialized in making people's lives miserable. Brennan spread documents across the table with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this hundreds of times. My client is filing a comprehensive lawsuit against you for property damage, emotional distress, loss of property value, and destruction of community assets, Brennan explained, his tone matter-of-fact. The damages being sought total $450,000. $450,000, Sarah's voice came out as a croak, plus legal fees and punitive damages, which could bring the total to over $600,000. Marcus stared at the documents, the legal language, swimming before his eyes. This is insane. The city investigation cleared us. The city investigation addressed code violations, Brennan corrected. This is a civil matter concerning property rights, community agreements, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. What community agreements? Marcus demanded. There were no agreements. Brennan pulled out a thick folder. Mr. Whitfield, my client has documented 8 years of established community use of your pool facility. Courts recognize implied contracts and community easements, especially when there's been consistent, long-term usage with the property owner's knowledge and consent. We were being neighborly, Sarah protested. That doesn't create legal obligations. Actually, in some circumstances, it does. Brennan opened the folder to reveal dozens of photographs spanning several years. These images show consistent community use of your pool, with your active participation and encouragement. Marcus recognized the photos: neighborhood barbecues, birthday parties, casual gatherings where neighbors had used their pool, but seeing them presented as legal evidence made innocent moments feel sinister. Furthermore, Brennan continued, my client has testimony from multiple neighbors confirming that you actively encouraged community use, scheduled events, and accepted compensation for enhanced services. Compensation? Marcus's voice rose. We never charged anyone anything. You accepted gifts, food contributions, and labor assistance that constituted bartered payment for pool access, Brennan replied smoothly. Courts recognize non-monetary compensation as establishing business relationships. Sarah leaned forward. Are you seriously arguing that when neighbors brought food to barbecues, that was payment for pool access? I'm arguing that a pattern of reciprocal benefit was established over 8 years, creating reasonable expectation of continued access. Marcus felt like he was drowning in legal quicksand. This is extortion. This is civil litigation. My client suffered real damages when you unilaterally destroyed a community asset that had been established through years of community investment. Community investment, time, labor, and resources contributed by neighbors to maintain and enhance the pool environment, pool parties that brought the community together. Relationships formed around shared recreational space, all destroyed without consultation or compensation. The lawyer slid another document across the table. However, my client is prepared to settle this matter out of court. Marcus looked at the settlement offer and felt his world tilt. She wants us to rebuild the pool, establish a neighborhood pool committee with her as chairwoman, pay her legal fees, and give her $50,000 in damages, plus a formal apology and acknowledgement of wrongdoing, Brennan added. This is blackmail, Sarah said flatly. This is a generous settlement offer that avoids a lengthy court battle you're unlikely to win. Unlikely to win. Marcus laughed bitterly. She was cited by the city for running an illegal business and filing false reports. Those citations are being appealed, Brennan said, and they don't address the civil damages my client suffered. What damages? Her property wasn't harmed. Emotional distress, loss of property value, damage to community relationships, and the cost of providing alternative swimming facilities for neighborhood children. Marcus stared at the lawyer. Alternative swimming facilities. You mean her? Illegal kiddie pool operation. My client's emergency response to the crisis you created by destroying community infrastructure. The circular logic was making Marcus's head spin. Karen had been caught red-handed operating the very business she'd accused Marcus of running. Yet somehow that was being twisted into evidence of damages she'd suffered. Mr. Brennan, Sarah said carefully, your client was literally cited for the same violations she accused us of committing. The circumstances are entirely different. My client was providing emergency community services in response to your actions. How is this different from what she accused us of doing? You were profiting from a community resource while pretending it was charity. My client was genuinely providing charity to address the crisis you created. Marcus wanted to scream. She collected money from neighbors to cover the costs of providing services you should have been providing. We were under no obligation to provide those services. That's where you're wrong, Mr. Whitfield. 8 years of established community use creates legal obligations, whether you recognize them or not. After Brennan left, Marcus and Sarah sat in stunned silence. The settlement documents lay spread across their table like a cancer diagnosis. She's going to bankrupt us, Sarah said quietly, over a pool, our own pool. Marcus's phone rang. Harold Henderson. Marcus, you need to know something. Karen's been going door to door with a lawyer, asking neighbors to sign statements about their pool usage. What kind of statements? Statements saying they had an understanding with you about ongoing pool access, that they contributed to pool maintenance and considered it a community facility. Marcus felt his blood pressure spike. Harold, you didn't sign anything, did you? Of course not. But Marcus, some people did. Who? The Johnsons signed. They're scared about their property values if this goes to court. The Martinez family signed because they're worried about being sued themselves for contributing to whatever Karen's claiming happened. This is insane. It gets worse. Karen's telling people that if they don't sign the statements, they could be called as witnesses in a long court battle that will cost everyone money and hurt the neighborhood's reputation. Marcus hung up and looked at Sarah. She's intimidating the neighbors into supporting her lawsuit. How is that legal? I don't know if it is, but it's happening. That afternoon, Marcus watched from his window as a steady stream of neighbors visited Karen's house. Some emerged, looking relieved. Others looked troubled. All of them avoided eye contact with the Whitfield house. By evening, Marcus felt like a pariah in his own neighborhood. The same people who had apologized to him just days earlier were now avoiding him again, this time out of fear rather than anger. We need our own lawyer, Sarah said. With what money? We just put Jake's college fund into the house renovations. Then we represent ourselves against a lawyer who specializes in this kind of manipulation. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message. She looked at it and went pale. What is it? It's from Elena Martinez. She says Karen told her that if we don't settle, the lawsuit could take years and cost everyone in the neighborhood thousands of dollars in legal fees. How would it cost the neighbors money? Apparently, Karen's claiming that if we force this to trial, she'll have to sue the neighbors too for their contributions. To the pool situation, Marcus stared at his wife. She's threatening to sue the neighbors if they don't support her in suing us. That's what Alina seems to think. That's single quotes as ... double quotes. Marcus struggled for words. That's genius, evil genius, but genius. Karen had found a way to turn the neighbors into weapons against the Whitfields while simultaneously protecting herself from their testimony. Signed the statements supporting her lawsuit or faced lawsuits themselves. Marcus's phone rang. Jake, calling from his friend's house. Dad, you need to see something. Check Channel 7's website. Marcus pulled up the news station's website on his laptop. The headline made his heart stop. Pool dispute escalates. Neighbors sue over destroyed community asset. The story was even worse than the headline. Karen had given another interview, this time positioning herself as the victim of wealthy neighbors who had destroyed a beloved community resource to avoid sharing with less fortunate families. The Whitfields pretended to be generous, Karen said in the video, but they were actually running a business. When the community tried to formalize the arrangement to protect everyone's interests, they destroyed the pool rather than share control. The reporter had even found an expert to comment on community pool rights and implied recreational easements. According to the expert, long-term community use of private recreational facilities could indeed create legal obligations for property owners. In some cases, the expert explained, courts have ruled that property owners who allow extended community use of facilities like pools, tennis courts, or playgrounds have